my teachers and everybody. Today we'll be dealing with two important vaccines. One is pertussis, another is varicella. This is a dual sponsored seminar, one by Panacea, another by MSD. So without much further delay, I'm going to start pertussis. Pertussis is a very severe disease for last few years because there has been a resurgence of pertussis because of the things which will be coming to know gradually. Bordetella pertussis is a coccobacilli with human being is the only host, and it comes in cycles. The cases increases every 3 to 5 years. Can you tell another disease which infectious disease which comes in cycle? It is malaria. Unfortunately, pertussis is grossly underreported because it is very difficult to diagnose, and many of the patients, particularly the older ones, are asymptomatic. They themselves don't suffer from the disease, but they transmit the infection. So why pertussis is a nuisance? It has a prolonged course. It starts with a catarrhal phase, followed by paroxysmal phase, then convalescent phase. And the cough continues. And that is the reason why it is known as 100 days cough. It has a high attack rate in close household contacts. In non-immune person, it has an attack rate of almost 100%. It's a disease not only with simple cough, it has considerable morbidity and mortality. Mortality is high, particularly in infants, young infants and neonates. And three important systems it involves. One is pulmonary, another is central nervous system, and third is nutrition. Antibiotic does not cure the disease, neither it shortens the period of communicability. It shortens the period of communicability, but does not lessen the period of illness. And what is more important, that in the recent years, the number of pertussis cases is on the rise. So I'll come to a small case. A 6-week-old girl presented with 5 days history of cough and breathlessness. Her 4-year-old brother has a persistent cough for more than 7 days. The elder brother was documented as having received all his childhood immunization, including acellular pertussis, from private setup till 18 months of age, and there was no vaccine further. On admission, the baby had mild recession and respiratory rate was normal 50 per minute, but poor oxygen saturation in room air only 88%. Our heart rate was 180 and other vital signs are normal. A chest radiograph, which I'll show you now, showed patchy perihilar changes. Her white cell count was very high, 56,000 above, with more than 50% lymphocytes, 31,000 above. And a presumptive diagnosis of bronchiolitis was made, and the view of leukocytosis, intravenous cefotaxime was started. This is the first X-ray. On the top is the X-ray first, and the next one is after 24 hours. Over the next 12 hours, the baby's breathing became more difficult. She was transferred to a pediatric intensive care. Lymphocytic leukocytosis was interpreted as a possible sign of pertussis, and clarithromycin was added. After 10 hours of stability with little ventilatory support, the patient developed rapidly progressive respiratory and cardiovascular failure. She died within 30 hours, despite giving maximum treatment, including inhaled nitric oxide and inotropes. Postmortem report showed severe pulmonary damage with pneumonic consolidation. Myocardium and liver showed focal ischemic damage. Bordetella pertussis was isolated from the lungs, and the patient's brother tested positive for B pertussis on nasopharyngeal secretion. The mother asked a very simple question to the pediatrician: why my elder son has developed pertussis in spite of taking all the vaccines, including the first booster dose. I was asked to come at 5 years for the second. Why did he develop pertussis? So what was the answer? Probably his vaccine has waned off. The protective efficacy of the vaccine was not there. Now let us see what actually happens. It is very unfortunate that the pertussis is on the rise. There are 5 middle and high income countries namely Australia, Portugal, USA, UK, and Chile, who has reported pertussis cases is on increase. And what is more important, there is resurgence of pertussis despite vaccination. The acceptance of vaccination is very high in this country. More than 50% of the young children, develop, they take vaccine, but still they are developing pertussis. So following the national outbreak of pertussis in 2011-2012, a major article was published in Clinical Infectious Disease, which stated that acellular pertussis vaccines provided shorter duration of protection as compared to the wholesale vaccine. And acellular pertussis vaccine is associated with increased risk of confirmed pertussis as compared to the wholesale pertussis. And you all know, all these high and middle income countries, they use acellular pertussis in their national program. So this was what the report came from England. Now let us see what happened in USA. Before 1950s, the number of cases of pertussis was very high. And then DPT vaccine came. This was wholesale pertussis, DTP. And the number of cases of pertussis fall down drastically. After 1990s, DTAP was added. This is acellular pertussis, but the antigen content of the pertussis is high. DT, capital small a, capital P. Thereafter, in just little few years after 2000, TDAP was added for booster doses, which contains acellular pertussis but in small doses. And you see what has happened. After that, the pertussis cases, after TD and DPAP and TDAP introduction, the pertussis cases rise. So more than 42,000 of pertussis was reported in 2012 alone, highest number of pertussis in last 50 years. And what was the reason? They investigated and found that rapidly waning protection following acellular pertussis vaccine, especially those who are not primed with DPT. What do you mean by primed? If you receive the first few doses wholesale pertussis, then if you give booster dose with acellular pertussis, then you have a long-term protection. But if you use acellular pertussis right from the beginning, then your protective efficacy against pertussis wanes off very rapidly. This is what happened in Australia. After introduction of GTAP, the number of pertussis cases rise. So pertussis reporting between 1999 and 2011, see the number of cases is in the rise. What happened in Canada? In first year of life, after getting 3 doses of acellular pertussis, the effectiveness of the vaccine was very high, more than 80%. And thereafter, every year, there was vaccine efficacy fell by 10% every year. And by the time the child reached 5 years, the vaccine effectiveness was below 50%, below 40%. So you see how quickly it falls, this acellular pertussis. So what is the reason of this resurgence of this pertussis in spite of taking vaccination? And mind there, in Western countries, the percentage of vaccination is very high, more than 90%. So what went wrong? Many theories were suggested that why this resurgence was there. First of all, it was suggested that increase awareness of pertussis in the healthcare providers and caregivers, improved surveillance and diagnostic method, inadequate vaccination schedule or inadequate compliance. This is not a very important cause because they have a very good compliance, lower than desired vaccine efficacy, waning of the vaccine induced protection, and emergence of new pertussis strains. So what is most important, that we need a very effective vaccine so that its efficacy does not fall that rapidly over time. So these are the causes. First of all, increase awareness and detection. Yes, now the diagnosis of pertussis has become easy. Second, declining vaccine uptake. This is not a very important cause because the vaccine uptake in those countries is fairly high. Waning immunity, this is a very important cause. Unvaccinated population, again, unvaccinated population may be in the older age group but not in the younger age group, and change in the organism. So these are the increased awareness, waning immunity, and change in organism. These are the very three important cause of resurgence of pertussis. So first of all, let's see. First of all, increase awareness and easy diagnosis. In our student days, diagnosis of pertussis was very difficult because we have to rely on culture. And this is a very fastidious organism which is very difficult to grow. Then in preceding few years, this RT-PCR has revolutionized the diagnosis of pertussis. Now we can diagnose pertussis by taking a simple throat swab from the nasopharynx or oropharynx. Not only we can diagnose pertussis, we have a number of respiratory panel with which you can diagnose number of other diseases also. And this PCR from the nasopharyngeal swab can be done from the onset of the disease till 4 weeks. Serological diagnosis is of no use for clinicians like us. It is for epidemiological purpose because you have to do twice in a gap of 14 days. Next, very important was I was telling you that waning of immunity. The acellular pertussis shows a very important thing there. The efficacy of the vaccine loses very quickly. Let's see what are the reasons. Number one, the acellular vaccine has suboptimal efficacy. It has a shorter duration of protection as is shown in the resurgence in several countries. It is less priming, it does not primes the immune system properly. The quality of immunological response is not good. It doesn't protect against all the antigenic components of Bordetella pertussis. It does not give a very good effective immunological memory. And another very important thing, it does not stimulate cell-mediated immune response to that degree. So if you see, this is the different virulence factors and antigens which are present in the Bordetella pertussis. Fimbriae, pertactin, filamentous hemoagglutinin. These are the antigens which are responsible for attachment of the Bordetella pertussis with the ciliated epithelial cells of the respiratory tract. Whereas cytotoxin, adenylate cyclase toxin, they, they evade the host defense mechanism. And another very important thing the pertussis has is lipo-oligosaccharide. This is the endotoxin, and this endotoxin creates a very strong immune response. It stimulates the innate immunity so that the host develops a very good immune response. So there are multiple virulence factors responsible for the pathogenesis of pertussis. But in case of acellular pertussis, if it is a one component acellular pertussis, then it only contains pertussis toxin. If it is a two component pertussis vaccine, then it contains pertussis toxin and filamentous hemoagglutinin. If it is a three component pertussis acellular pertussis vaccine, then it contains pertussis toxin, filamentous hemoagglutinin, and pertectin. And if it is a five component, then it contains this filamentous hemoagglutinin, pertactin, and Fimbriae type 2 and type 3. So only few of the antigens of the virulence factors which are present in Bordetella pertussis is there in acellular pertussis. But whole cell pertussis contains all these antigens or virulence factor. So this is very important for a design of the vaccine. A small study was published in New England Journal of Medicine where they compared two groups of children, one who has received whole cell pertussis at least 5 doses with vaccine starting before 1 year of age, and those who have received acellular pertussis. It was seen the incidence of Bordetella pertussis per 100,000 population was as high as 169, those who received acellular pertussis, but those who received whole cell pertussis, it was almost half, 81. So wholesale pertussis gives a much better protection as compared to the acellular pertussis. So why this is there? Because as I've told you, the duration of protection with acellular pertussis is very short. What happens in case of acellular pertussis when primary vaccination, that means 3 doses of acellular pertussis is given in the first year of life, it gives good protection for first 1.5 years. Thereafter, you take a booster dose, the protection is prolonged. But thereafter, the protection gradually wanes off. If you don't take further boosters, which are often missed in every country, then there is an accumulation of susceptible pool of young adults and adolescents who have lost their immunity against pertussis, and they serve as a reservoir for pertussis, and they infect the unvaccinated or incompletely vaccinated infants. So like this, the cycle of acellular pertussis continues in the Western world. Let us see a little more in detail. This is a paper published from England and Wales, where they compared that if you have a natural pertussis infection, or you develop a natural immunity due to pertussis infection or wholesale vaccine, your duration of protection is as high as 15 years. Vis-a-vis, if you are given an acellular pertussis, the duration of protection is only 5 years. Not only the duration of protection, the degree of protection with natural infection or wholesale pertussis is much higher as compared to the acellular pertussis. So that's the reason why WHO has recommended that wholesale vaccine, those countries who are using wholesale vaccine for primary immunization should never change to acellular pertussis, because wholesale vaccine has a longer duration of protection and the degree of protection is much higher. So what I was telling, that with natural infection or wholesale pertussis vaccine, the range of protection is high, 12, 15 years, whereas with acellular pertussis is low, only 3 to 5 years. So this is another very important study which have shown that after receiving 5 doses of acellular pertussis, the efficacy or effectiveness of the vaccine falls by 10% per year. 10% per year after 5 doses of DTaP vaccine, acellular pertussis. Whereas if you take TDAP vaccine, the booster dose given beyond 5 years, the rate of decline of vaccine effectiveness or efficacy is very high, 45% per year. See how rapidly it falls. And another very important thing is that data indicates that pertussis strain have evolved over the years with difference between the pre-vaccine and post-vaccine era. It has been seen that moderate change in the genomic sequence of the virulence factors like pertussis toxin, pertactin has developed. And till date, there is no evidence that the effectiveness of the wholesale vaccine is influenced by this antigenic drift or selection of least competent vaccine strains. So I again reiterate, though there is some antigenic change in the Bordetella pertussis strains, but this does not influence the effectivity of the wholesale vaccine. But in those countries where acellular pertussis vaccine has been used, it has been seen the antigen has changed completely. The vaccine antigen differs from the antigen which is present in the circulating pertussis. So this has caused a major problem. So now you see the vaccine strain contains pertactin 1, pertussis toxin A2, whereas the circulating strain is pertactin 2 and pertussis toxin A1. So there is a complete mismatch between the pertussis vaccine strain and the circulating strain, and this has caused a problem. It has been seen that Bordetella pertussis strain shows genetic selection. It has changed for vaccine escape mutants. The new strains which are circulating in those countries is quite different from the antigens which are there in the vaccine. So adaptation by the pathogens, mostly due to the vaccine pressure, has led to the divergence of strain as compared to the circulating strain. It has been seen that the main antigen, the pertactin, the Bordetella pertussis now in circulation, they lack this antigen. So pertactin deficient Bordetella pertussis isolate has been increased from 14% to 85% in Australia. And not only that, the other antigens which are there in the pertussis vaccine like fibrinated hemagglutinin, pertussis toxin has also changed. So there is a gross mismatch between the vaccine and the circulating strain. And what is the immunological basis of this change? When you are giving a wholesale vaccine, what happens? The wholesale vaccine generates a very strong innate immunity. More and more number of antigen presenting cells are stimulated because the wholesale pertussis vaccine contains endotoxin, lipo-oligoparasite. And so what happens? The antigen presenting cells stimulate the naive T cells. This in turn produces Th1 response and Th17 response. This Th1 and Th17 response will produce high quality of immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin G1. And it will also stimulate the cytotoxic T cells, which in turn will stimulate the macrophages and neutrophils so that there is intracellular killing of the bacteria. So wholesale pertussis vaccine not only causes good quality of immunoglobulins, but it also gives rise a very good quality of T cell response in the form of cytotoxic T cells. But in acellular pertussis does not contain those antigens which stimulates a very strong innate immunity. Here all is dependent upon the adjuvant like aluminum salts. So it stimulates the T cell, but here the T cell response is Th2 response. And these Th2 response gives rise to production of immunoglobulins which are of poor quality, and it does not stimulate that much of cytotoxic T cells. So the immunological memory is also poor. And so what happens? An acellular vaccine priming is associated with Th2-like response. And acellular vaccine has shown in a progressive shorter duration of protection. And it does not bind complement and leads to suboptimal inflammatory response. So to sum up the whole thing, if you are giving wholesale pertussis vaccine, then your immunoglobulin production will be very good, and the T cell will be highly boosted, and your memory T cell will be highly stimulated. So there will be long-term protection. The complement system will be activated. So there is very good opsonization and phagocytosis. But if you are given acellular pertussis, it will result in Th2 response. Th2 response produces not that good quality of IgG. Complement is never stimulated. T cells are not that much stimulated, so it results in poor clearing of the bacteria, also short-term protection. So there lies the difference between these two vaccines. So it has been said that acellular pertussis gives a short-term protection, whereas if you give wholesale pertussis, it gives high proliferation, does not lead to quick waning, and it gives a T cell response. So it has a longer duration of protection. So this is a very important study which was done with baboons, the primate which closely resembles the human being. 3 groups of baboon was selected. In one group, vaccine was not given. In another group, acellular pertussis was given. Another group, wholesale vaccine was given. And these baboons were exposed to pertussis. And 2 important things were seen. How many of these baboons developed the disease and how many transmitted the disease because they carry the infection in their throat. It was seen that those with no vaccination, all of them developed disease, and they transmitted the infection in high density till 35 days. Those who are given acellular pertussis vaccine, none of the acellular vaccine recipient developed disease, but they had a high amount of bacteria in the throat, and they transmitted the infection for 33 to 35 days, just like baboon who have not received the vaccine in high density. And those who have received the wholesale pertussis vaccine, they not only developed disease, they didn't develop the disease, and they also didn't transmit the infection. They transmitted the infection only with short duration, 18 days, and that too the number of bacteria was very low density. So acellular pertussis can give protection to clinical disease, but it does not give protection in the mucosa. That is the reason why it might transmit the disease. So to summarize the facts on acellular pertussis vaccine, a continuous mutation is going in the pertussis bacteria due to vaccine pressure, and the pertussis bacteria has developed the antigens which are not there in the vaccine. It has a good initial efficacy, but thereafter the efficacy falls very fast. It does not have an impact on transmission. Acellular, in spite of receiving acellular vaccine, you will transmit the disease. They cannot clear mucosal infection, and acellular pertussis has a different type of immune response as compared to the wholesale. They give rise to Th2, whereas wholesale give rise to Th1 response. So this is what is seen in Frontiers of Immunology. Pertussis immune response showed that adolescents who are primed with acellular pertussis are less protected. It has been seen that markedly increased risk of disease associated with entirely AP series. This is published in Clinical Infectious Disease Journal. And now let us see what has World Health Organization has to tell. WHO tells us more rapid waning of immunity and possibly a reduced impact on transmission with acellular pertussis as related to the wholesale pertussis. It has urged that national programs who are currently administering wholesale vaccine should continue with wholesale vaccine. What has ACVIP, our own IIP, has to say? IIP has said that long-term efficacy over 10 years has been observed to be superior with wholesale pertussis vaccine. Recent outbreaks of pertussis in various developed countries have sparked a debate on the effectiveness of acellular pertussis vaccine. It has also told that lesser duration of protection and decreased impact on transmission of the disease by acellular vaccine. Efficacy of both AP and WP is preventing pertussis in the first year of life is equivalent, and thereafter AP shows poor effect. So IIP has also echoed what WHO has said. Currently those countries using WP wholesale vaccine in the national program should continue with the same. And let's see what is the national immunization program of our country. In infants, 3 doses of wholesale pertussis should be given at 6, 10 and 14 weeks, and thereafter wholesale pertussis first booster at 16 to 24 months and second is 5 to 6 years. So what I request everybody, that wholesale pertussis should be given at least in the first year of life. You should prime them properly. Thereafter, even if you give acellular pertussis, but all first infants should receive wholesale pertussis. So the advantages of wholesale pertussis, it contains all the antigenic components of Bacillus bordetella pertussis. It has a very high efficacy. The protection is longer. It gives a very good priming. The immunological response is also good, and not only it prevents the disease, but also it reduces the carriage and disease transmission. So with this, I thank you for your patient hearing.
May I ask you one question?
Yes.
If acellular pertussis is not that effective and immunological is not poor, then why WHO is promoting this? And it is most cost effective also.
Who is
Cost
not
effective
promoting?
also.
Who is not
And
promoting?
why WHO has given? I
Yeah.
mean,
Why there is resurgence? Because if you give acellular pertussis, you have to give boosters regularly. You have to give boosters every 5 years. Not only at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Otherwise, your immunity will fall. And that's the reason, because adolescents are very reluctant to take vaccine. The adolescents and young adults, they developed a pool. But if you give a wholesale pertussis, you need not give boosters that frequent. So there
No,
lies the difference.
but Ritobroto, the difference is only few years. Say suppose
But
it
few years
decreases at
is
6 years, if a cellular pertussis vaccine decreases at 6 years, it will be 10 to 12 years maybe in case of.
so you need
So
two important boosters, one at 10
yes,
years, one at 16 years.
you need to give
But
boosters always.
all the way
And,
boosters, and its
and
immunity also falls very rapidly. Even after giving boosters, the efficacy of the vaccine, if you compare to them,
yes,
after
yes.
5 years, the efficacy differs. So it has been emphasized that those countries who are using wholesale pertussis, World Health Organization has asked to continue with wholesale pertussis. It has never said that you can change to acellular pertussis, because if
Thing
you
is that
change,
why they are promoting acellular pertussis?
nobody is promoting.
That is not that effective, and DPT is also not available.
Why they are promoting? There's one reason. This
The
wholesale
side
pertussis is reactogenic. But if you
Yes,
see the
for
side
that we are
effects,
using that.
little amount of fever, little amount of pain is acceptable. We have taken this vaccine for such a long time. And the other things which were blamed on wholesale pertussis, the encephalopathy and other
Yes.
things, these are all genetically predetermined child who develop uh, this encephalopathy, Dravet, and other things. So that you cannot blame on wholesale pertussis as a whole.
But in
But at
this
the
era of
same time,
medical legal, all
and
this condition, you just cannot take the risk of giving that
No,
also.
but you can have it with after. Manan, a child who has that genetic predisposition will in any case develop Dravet's, even if you give wholesale pertussis. That's what I'm saying.
see, Dr. Kundu, the genetics will come afterwards.
Yes.
Suppose I give a vaccine and the baby develops convulsions or maybe encephalopathy or Dravet syndrome afterwards. Now, I will have to then prove whether they will give me a chance to check the genetics or not. That
Yes,
is very
nowadays they
difficult
will
to say.
all give you a chance to prove that. Yeah, and nowadays the things
They
are
will
there.
not. They will not
Things
give
are
me a
there.
chance. They will not give me a chance.
But in a low income country like us, it is always better to go for a vaccine which is durable, because it is
You
very
can, in this
difficult
medical
to.
legal condition, you cannot say it is
No.
in condition like us or not.
You will not be sued in the court of law if you give wholesale vaccine and somebody develops.
I don't
febrile
think anybody will take the
No.
risk.
No, there are so many
In private
countries.
practice, I don't think anybody will take the risk.
Yes, that
I
is
have
the
seen
main
in
point Mayadi
yes.
has come now, that when you are giving 1:1, you will have
Yes.
to discuss with the parents.
Yes,
There
so
are the
you
two
discuss with
options.
the parents and tell them that
And
this
yes,
vaccine
Can I
has a
comment
longer
one?
protection.
Can I comment
And
one?
my question
Yes,
is
yes.
why? Who is allowing to promoting or allowing this vaccine to come?
Promoting, who is
Madam,
not
If it is
promoting?
not that effective,
No.
Madam, I
then
have
why
some comments to make
when we
here.
have got a better vaccine,
No,
cellular
better na.
Just one
efficacious
second.
vaccine.
Just 1 second, please. Madam, I have some comment. You are telling it's promotion, better vaccine, worse vaccine. Now, for your information, this acellular pertussis combination vaccine does not have any efficacy data ever. Only the acellular combination vaccines, they have efficacy data and immunogenicity data. Now, this combination acellular by wholesale pertussis vaccine, they only have non-inferiority immunogenicity data. So by this data alone, you cannot stamp anything bad or good. This
That's the thing you
vaccine
should
needs to
realize.
have more field trial and more data. Only because some wholesale pertussis vaccine is being used in the government setup, so we cannot just follow that trend in that line alone. We must have some solid scientific background before we
this is the forum that where you should talk to the company that they should have more data.
No, this is the forum that not. You should try to
No, the
understand
company people
whatever.
are there, na. Company people are there.
What science says, you try to understand. The main basic thing of these.
science is okay with DT wholesale vaccine.
Yes.
But what about the combination? You must
combination when it comes. What I said.
data.
What I
combine 5 vaccines.
Let me explain
You
this
must
to you.
have some field efficacy data
What
to
I
work.
said that this
Just because it's a wholesale purchase, it's not bad. But when
No.
it is combined with other vaccines, it has to prove its efficacy. So where is the data?
Yes, that's right. What I want to
Where is the
say,
data? Have you shown in your presentation
no,
any data,
no,
any
no.
efficacy? Even
If
if you ask the company, they won't be able to show any efficacy data. So where
so
is it?
efficacy data is not there with any of the vaccines. With
No,
these
it
two.
is there. It is
So
there with wholesale.
it's
But not
that
with,
I'm saying with the
it
wholesale
is
because it
there
has
with
been used.
acellular, but not with wholesale.
But
And
when
especially
you,
when it is combined, because there is IPV, there is HIP, there is hepatitis B. So
yes,
you are piggybacking these vaccines on DTP vaccine. Now, when you are combining vaccines, then you must have a fresh efficacy data where that it is not interfering with the immunogenicity of the other components. But there is no such data with this particular vaccine.
so
So I
another
think
very
better
important
not
thing
going
what
up.
I,
What I was forced to tell this because Madam was repeatedly telling that why WHO is promoting X vaccine
no,
and
no, no,
but it is
nobody is
not a
promoting.
question of
WHO
promoting.
does not promote
It is
anything.
the scientific background. That is how the acellular vaccine has got the license due to its scientific background. Whereas this vaccine has only non-inferiority data compared to other standalone DPT vaccines, not the other combination vaccines. This you have to make clear to the audience also that it
So
only
what we
has
see,
non-inferiority with other standalone DPT vaccines.
so what we see is very important is that DTAP, only DTAP vaccine is not there. It is always combined with some other vaccine. That's a very important thing. Had it been so that the only DTAP vaccine was there something, then you could have compared. So you don't compare, you give only non-inferiority data. But if you see the science of vaccinology, the wholesale pertussis vaccine has all the antigens. So definitely it will be little bit better. It does not needs any, you can understand this as a whole. So
But
I
only
think
DPT is also not available.
DTAP is not available. It is combined with
DTAP
something.
is not available. DPT is also not available.
DPT is still
No,
available.
DPT is not available nowadays.
Very
DPT,
little.
DT both are not available. DT বদলে এখন TD দিচ্ছে.
DT is a very short supply is there. That's the reason they are manufacturing very less amount of the vaccine. But DTAP is not available, so that there's no comparison data. What you are doing, you are giving combination vaccine, and this combination might influence. Supposing what I have told you that this DTAP does not contains LPS, so it does not stimulate the innate immunity. But when you combine DTAP with IPV,
Pradeep, go
the
for the
IPV
next
will.
one. Pradeep, go for
So
the
I
next
think
one.
enough has
Still,
been
he
discussed.
hasn't stopped sharing the screen, so I can't share. Yes. So shall we start?
Yes, yes.
Or
start.
we do some more discussion on DTP vaccine? I am okay with it.
No, start.
So good evening, everybody. We move on to a rather innocuous disease. It's the varicella. And even the varicella virus is also structurally and antigenically quite unique. It has got little antigenic variation, unlike the influenza, and also no distinct serotypes. So it doesn't change frequently. But what makes it unique is this high contagiousness. Now you all are aware of the R0 value that we have been talking around very frequently regarding the COVID virus. The R0 of varicella is very high. Even compared to COVID, it's higher. But of course, the disease severity usually is low. We must not forget that even this virus may lead to several complications and also hospitalization. Though the global burden of disease study, as we can see, has come down over the years, maybe due to vaccination in the developed countries, but still in 2010, there were about 6,800 estimated varicella deaths. So it is also a figure that cannot be ignored, but what we commonly see that varicella is a disease which makes a child suffer for more than 2 weeks. There is school absenteeism, and also it affects the parental work attendance. So these are the main reasons. I would like to highlight the typical characteristics of varicella infection in a global perspective. If we see in the temperate climate, more than 90% become infected before adolescence. Compared to in the tropical and the subtropical region, here the higher overall mean age is more towards adolescent and adults. So this is a cause of concern where these population, the older population, are more prone to complications and other infections when they get infected with varicella virus. So this is a cause of concern typical of this region. Though this epidemiology varies from country to country, place to place, but what we can see here in most part of the world, including Asia Pacific region, the incidence remains high, and that is over the years it is same. I would like to draw your attention to a very important Indian study which was done in 2000, published in Indian Pediatrics by Dr. M.R. Lopeshwar. If you see this chart, bar diagram, you can see the prevalence of varicella IgG. It was, the study was done in many centers to determine the IgG antibodies against varicella zoster virus. Here we can see about 50% of children up to 10 years, they did not have varicella IgG. So they were susceptible to varicella infection. So this is a very important highlight that as the children go to the adolescence, still they haven't developed the varicella IgG that will give them natural protection. Now this is a typical 8-year-old healthy child, fever, slightly pruritic vesicular rash, mainly in the trunk, limbs, of course, palms and soles, and also in the oral cavity. There is no doubt about this. This is a typical varicella infection, pruritic, centripetal distribution. Usually there are 250 to 500 lesions in varying stages, typically as we see from macules, papules to vesicles and up to crusting. This all can stay at the same time. The fever is usually low grade, but the varicella is more severe in infants, adolescents and adults that I was telling you before also. The incubation period 14 to 16 days, but varicella can develop within 2 to 16 days after birth in infant born to mother with active varicella around delivery, that will come soon. As we have told, it is very contagious, and significantly the contagiousness starts 24 to 48 hours before the rash is evident and until the vesicles are crusted, usually 3 to 7 days after onset of the rash. And of course, varicella is associated with several complications like bacterial infection, mainly skin, group A strepto and staph, and also it may lead to encephalitis and cerebellar ataxia, and sometimes associated with pneumonia by various organisms. And there could be a progressive varicella also when there is organ involvement, coagulopathy, hemorrhage, and the continued vesicular lesion is even after 7 days. It is rare in children, more common the herpes zoster in adults, but children might also suffer from this condition. We have to think beyond if children suffers. Regarding the treatment decision, this is very important. In immunocompromised individuals, the virus replication stops by 72 hours after onset of rash. So if we take a decision to treat, it has to be early. If started within 24 hours of onset of rash, then there is a modest decrease in symptoms. And but we have to remember that oral acyclovir is not routinely recommended for all varicella infections. Now, in healthy individuals, there are some situations where oral acyclovir may be given. Number one is the unvaccinated older children older than 12 years, chronic cutaneous or pulmonary disorders on long-term salicylate therapy, or if the patient is receiving short, intermittent oral or aerosolized steroids, and of course, secondary household cases where the disease might be more severe. Dose of acyclovir 20 milligram per kg per dose, maximum 800, given 4 times per day for 5 days, but ideally started within 24 hours of exanthem, latest 72 hours. If started beyond 72 hours, it's not much effective. Now, this is a 10-day-old term neonate who developed rash, and on history taking, the mother had chickenpox 4 days prior to delivery, but the newborn was not given any medicine immediately after delivery. And this is a typical neonatal varicella where the mother demonstrates varicella from 5 days prior to delivery to 2 days postpartum, where there is no time to mount the IgM and IgG response and pass on to the fetus. So the fetus is exposed to the virus but not to the maternal antibodies. So infants are at high risk, and rash at the end of first week or early second week should raise the suspicion of neonatal varicella. Treatment here is varicella zoster immunoglobulin if available, and injection acyclovir. If varicella zoster immunoglobulin is not available, then IVIG may be given. Some situations require intravenous acyclovir, like the severe disease, immunocompromised children, patients on high dose steroid for more than 14 days, and of course neonatal varicella, as we have already discussed. The dose of intravenous acyclovir 10 milligram per kg per dose 3 times per day started within 72 hours, and in neonates 14 days if there is skin or eye involvement, 21 days if there is a disseminated or CNS disease. In children and adolescents 7 to 10 days or until no new lesions for 48 hours. Care of exposed people is very important because varicella vaccine administered within 3 days and up to 5 days after exposure might be protective, but definitely a second dose is indicated at the appropriate time. Varicella zoster immunoglobulin is indicated, as I have already told, in neonates born to mothers who develop chickenpox 5 days prior or 2 days after delivery, neonates less than 28 weeks of gestation or birth weight less than 1000 grams exposed in the neonatal period, infants exposed to varicella within first 2 weeks of life whose mothers do not have evidence of immunity to varicella zoster virus, and pregnant exposed to varicella and immunocompromised, as we can very well understand. Now, this is a 10-year-old boy who was vaccinated with a single dose of varicella vaccine at 1.5 years, but developed mild fever with maculopapular rash, few vesicular rash following an outbreak of chickenpox in the school. Now, is this a breakthrough varicella? Most probably it's a breakthrough varicella because varicella occurring in children vaccinated more than 6 weeks before the onset of rash. That means any time, if the time elapses more than 6 weeks after vaccination with varicella vaccine, rash develops typical of chickenpox, then it is a breakthrough infection, but it is generally mild and atypical. Maculopapular rash is present without fever, but the cause of concern is that it's potentially infectious because it's caused by both wild and vaccine viruses. 15% of vaccine recipients are at increased risk, and this child could be an index case of outbreak also, because this secondary, breakthrough varicella is also infectious, but often it's difficult to recognize. They are co-infected with wild and vaccine strains, and there is risk of zoster from reactivated wild strain also. The risk factors for varicella: vaccinating a child less than 16 months of age. Varicella vaccine is given usually 16 months and beyond. If there is less than 28 days interval between MMR and varicella vaccine is a risk factor for breakthrough, and of course the time elapsed since vaccination, particularly a single dose, is a cause of concern. Is it due to vaccine failure? Well, it's not yet ascertained. Some studies suggest it may be due to primary vaccine failure, and some suggest due to waning of immunity, but breakthrough is usually seen after 1 dose, maybe due to insufficient number of virus-specific memory T cells. There is an interesting history of development of varicella vaccine. All the varicella vaccines are developed from the Oka strain. Oka is the family name of the index child, a 3-year-old boy who had a typical chicken pox, and the fluid was from the vesicle was aspirated, and all the vaccine are developed from that index Oka strain. Initially, it was the Oka Viken, which was attenuated and was clinical use till 1974. Following that, the Oka VZV was further attenuated by passage in human embryonic lung cell, then guinea pig embryo cells and others. And the final product that we are getting today, the Oka Mark and the Oka RIT, are from this lineage. Now, all the varicella vaccines that are available are the attenuated varicella from the initial Oka strain that was isolated. Now, manufacturers add from 3 to 9 steps of attenuation after the initial lot that is developed. Usually it's passed to the HDC to prepare enough vaccine to meet the marketing need, and this attenuation and the steps of attenuation determines the product, and it depends from manufacturer to manufacturer. It is believed that the higher number of passage of attenuation, the lower is the immunogenicity. Fortunately, there is very strict correlate of protection for varicella. 0.06 unit per ml is a cutoff for seroconversion, and GP ELISA of more than 5 units per ml is considered protective. This is a WHO standard. And if we see the head-to-head study between the Oka Mark varicella vaccine and the Oka RIT varicella vaccine, here we can see the Oka Mark unit, the percentage of more than or equal to 5 GP ELISA unit was 97. When it was 16,000 PFU, it was 95. Whereas Oka RIT of 40,000 PFU was 85.6. So it might be related to the steps of attenuation, that Oka RIT had more steps of attenuation than the Oka Mark strain. And this Oka Mark has also proven efficacy with 2 doses over 10-year follow-up. You can see with 1 dose at 10-year follow-up, the efficacy was 94.4%, and with 2 doses, it was 98.3%. And there are published data on Oka Mark single dose vis-a-vis Oka RIT single dose, and of course the MMR varicella combination, which is no longer available right now in the market with 1 and 2 doses. And here we can see this is the vaccine efficacy. The Oka Mark single dose, the efficacy here was 86% compared to Oka RIT of 56%. And against the mild disease, we can see Oka Mark 63%, Oka RIT 22%, and moderate disease with Oka Mark it was 96%, and Oka RIT it was 86% vaccine efficacy. This is a published study. Now, Oka Mark also has more than 14-year follow-up study which demonstrates a long-term protection. It was done from 95 to 2009. And here we can see against, this is the 14-year follow-up. And here the red line is any symptoms. The blue line is more than 50 lesions, and the black line is more than 300 lesions. Here you can see up to 14 years when the second dose was started, it doesn't show any evidence of waning of immunity as we can see here. So similar is the Oka Mark varicella vaccine study, which has shown 0 breakthrough and 100% effectiveness. It's a 14-year follow-up that we have already seen, and it has demonstrated that it is 100% effective. Now here is the comparison where comparison of the varicella vaccines available, where there was higher incidence of breakthrough varicella with other brands, where Oka Mark was taken as the reference. We see the Oka RIT, where there is risk ratio of 3.3 with moderate breakthrough and 2.6 with mild breakthrough. So continuing with the previous discussion, we see the chance of breakthrough even after one dose of Okamark is much less than other brands, but of course 2 doses of all the varicella vaccines are indicated. And this is another representation where Oka RIT has shown increased chance of breakthrough varicella compared to the green line of Okamark, where it was a 10 and 11-year follow-up study that we can see here. The overall safety profile of the Okamark strain for 22 years, which is a long study and it's a worldwide safety data. This is based on the observation, what we have seen. There is only 3% of serious adverse effects, and most common were pyrexia, generally in the 4 to 6 year age group, headache and vomiting in the 7 to 18-year age group, and pyrexia and headache are considered as serious adverse events, but 97% of the adverse events were only non-serious, which was mild injection site reactions only. So this is following the 2-dose Okamark varicella vaccine evaluation over 8 years. Vaccination schedule, as we know, first dose 15 months or older, second dose anytime 3 months after the first dose or at 4 to 6 years of age. But during an outbreak, first dose can be given after 1 year and second dose after 3 months. But if the child is above 13 years, the second dose can be given at a gap of 4 to 8 weeks also. If the child is on inhaled steroid or nasal spray or topical, the child can receive varicella vaccine. If the child is on systemic steroid less than 2 milligram per kg body weight, again the child can receive varicella vaccine. But if the child is getting more than 2 milligram per kg per day for 2 weeks or more, preferable to keep a gap of 4 weeks between the vaccination and the systemic steroid use. That means after stoppage of systemic steroid, we must wait for 4 weeks, then give the varicella vaccine if it's getting more than 2 milligram per kg per day. There is some concern about vaccine failure. It's due to mainly failure to develop humoral immunity to varicella zoster vaccine at all, but which is generally very rare. There is usually an initial immune burst which generates a positive GP ELISA, but it might be inadequate to generate sustained T cell memory response, leading to waning of immunity over a period. And the second dose is usually protective. So this is one of the reasons why a second dose is given, because there is possibility of a primary or possibility of a secondary vaccine failure. And of course, outbreaks of varicella in schools, despite high rates of vaccination, is sometimes seen, and the second dose gives that additional security. And of course, the contagiousness of breakthrough varicella that we have already discussed should be taken care of. And the second dose boosts both humoral and cell-mediated immunity. And the vaccine efficacy, of course, is better with 2 doses, as we have seen in the previous slides. So there are various varicella vaccines are available in the Indian market. As we know, various makes, but we must have an overall idea that the Chinese brands, they are approved mainly based on the studies in China. They do not have any studies in other parts of the world, and publications are mainly in Chinese. So we are a bit skeptical. We have 2 other brands. One is the Okamark and one is the Oka RIT by GSK, which are available in the market. But Okamark is the only brand with both US FDA and European Society approval, along with the adherence of the GMP. So this thing we must be careful. Now there are some talks about the strain of the virus, then the preservative, the stabilizer, the antibiotics. Well, these are all factors which are required to make the final product fit for marketing. It has been proved that all these additions like the stabilizers, the antibiotics, these are all safe and none scores over others. and none is risky or harmful to be scared about. The monosodium glutamate that is present in many of the brands are categorized as GRAS, that is generally recognized as safe stabilizer by US FDA. And this is monosodium glutamate is present in many other vaccines. Similarly, the gelatin, which is a protein of porcine origin, but anaphylaxis is extremely rare because this is the hydrolyzed gelatin. Trehalose is a naturally occurring disaccharide. It doesn't have any advantage, but again, it is safe and non-toxic. Same is the bovine calf syrup, which is, there is theoretical concern of BAC, but US FDA has strict guideline, and this is again very safe, and it has been proved that it doesn't cause BAC. It's only a theoretical concern. And same is the neomycin. Hypersensitivity to neomycin has not been documented with the quantity that is used as antibiotic additives in this preparation. So if we compare all these, as we have already told, the OCA-Merck and OCA-RIC, they adhere to the GMP. Of course, OCA-Merck is both US FDA and EMEA approved, whereas the OCA-RIT is only European Society approved. The efficacy data are there for these two vaccines, and also the population impact data, whereas these are not available for the Chinese brands. Safety data, of course, it's available for both these brands, but again, the studies done are very few, and in China only, it's not easily accessible. Of course, all these vaccines, they have immunogenicity data because these are all pre-licensure recommendations, and this Chinese vaccine had immunogenicity data before licensure in India. And regarding effectiveness data, the OCA-Merck has a robust effectiveness data, 33 studies, 28 with 1 dose and 5 with 2 doses. OCA-RIT has 13, and Chinese brands, they have 1 or 2 studies. So if we see the OCA-Merck, for all varicella, the mean vaccine efficacy is 81%, for moderate to severe is 96%, and for severe it is 99% compared to OCA-RIT, where it's 70%, 93% and 100%. So this is the comparison table for your reference, and thank you all, and thanks for patient hearing. There is one question: what is the protocol for vaccine above 18 years? Well, 2 doses again, but the second dose can be given after 4 to 8 weeks. Zuvicella, which variety of OCA? It is a Chinese brand of varicella vaccine. So which variety of OCA? I am not sure. What is the justification of MMR and varicella at 15 months? As you told, less breakthrough, less at 16 months. Well, varicella vaccine can be given above 1 year in outbreak situation. It is recommended above 15 months. It can be given along with MMR in 2 arms at 15 months, or MMR can be given at 15 months and varicella after 4 weeks at 16 months. So this is the overall recommendation. So I think these were the questions on varicella vaccine that I have received. Any other?
I've got one question, that when there was a combined vaccine, varicella and MMR, one of these, I think the varicella had a higher dose. Right? When there was a combined vaccine on
Varicella and chickenpox, yes.
The doses were high. The varicella
There was some interference. That might be the reason.
Yeah, there was some interference.
That is the interference. Then why are we giving the vaccine, both the vaccines together?
You say the prick. That's a very important point. And you say 1 visit.
No, but
I tell you, that's what I was telling in reference to the pentavalent vaccine and hexavalent vaccine also. When you combine the 2 vaccine, then there might be some interference due to the antigenic characteristics. But when you are giving 2 vaccines separately in 2 arms, then there I mean, immune activation is different pathway. So there will not be direct interference between the antigens compared to if it is combined in the same formulation.
A combination vaccine is always welcome because it creates a very much.
No. Why they have taken it off from the market?
Which one?
I don't know that
No, no,
combination.
They have taken it from the Indian market because supply was not good enough. But it is there in the international market still. Because they couldn't ensure the supply.
I just didn't listen that suppose there is a contact with varicella, and how do you manage that situation?
Contact
You can
with,
come up. Contact with varicella.
Yeah, contact with varicella preferably within 24 hours or at the most within 72 hours. If the person who has come in contact with varicella hasn't received even a single dose of varicella vaccine, he should or she should receive the first dose within 24 preferable or maximum 72 hours. Then at an appropriate interval should receive the second dose. If
Actually,
the
they have
person
come
has
after
received
5
only
days.
one dose, then has come in
what is the
contact,
incubation period
then
of
immediately
varicella?
No.
Incubation period of varicella is 21 days, at the maximum 42 days.
Yeah.
And the vaccine starts its efficacy after 2 weeks. Starts. So if you give the vaccine within 24 hours, you get a good protection.
No.
Even if you
Most
give
of the time they come after 5 days. What do you do then?
Yeah, if you give within 24 hours, good. But if you give,
We know that.
but after 5 days, actually I think till 7 days, Joydeep will tell. Till 7 days you can give.
Maximum I have seen is 5 days. Joydeep is saying 72 hours. I have the reference where it is up to 5 days. I have never seen it after 7 days.
No, the calculation is what Dr. Kundu was right just now telling. The incubation period of varicella minus the time taken for antibody formation is the minimum. Ideally 24 hours, preferably 72 hours. But as you are telling, even if the child comes 5 days, it falls within that incubation period when it might give some protection.
Two weeks.
21 days is the maximum. 21 days is the maximum. It's usually 14 to 21 days.
Yes, but antibody production starts after 14 days.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the reason why you take this window period of 5 to 7 days.
What other options you have? What other options you have?
If it is an immunocompromised, then you have to give varicella zoster immunoglobulin. And if the child is immunocompetent, you wait. Once the child develops, you give acyclovir.
Varicella zoster immunoglobulin is
There
available.
is one also that after 10 days of contact, you can give acyclovir.
I don't know whether you are just only acyclovir.
I will be just posting it in my faculty group. There is a reference. You can give intravenous immunoglobulin also.
If you see the Red Book doesn't suggest to give only acyclovir in such cases.
Is varicella zoster immunoglobulin available?
See, I have the exam. I have the exam after a few days, and I cannot take the risk. So what can I do? I cannot allow the varicella to.
Then you can listen something.
There are
special
two
situation.
options. One is the vaccine, but the vaccine sometimes they come late. The second is that you give zoster immunoglobulin. That is not available. Third is that you can give your intravenous gamma globulin. And the fourth is that after 10 doses of the contact, you give acyclovir.
Okay, there is one question about the gap between 2 doses of varicella vaccine. Well, as you have already told in the question itself, it can be given at 4 to 6 years of age, or it can be given after a gap of 3 months also.
3 months better.
If it's given after a gap of 3 months, chance of breakthrough varicella is less. Has been
so if you think of individual protection, then 3 months. If you think of national protection, and if your vaccine acceptance is as high as more than 72%, then give the second dose at 5 years. I think
Thank you.
questions are over. Thank you for all for the patient hearing.
এপি নিউজের একটা আমি একটা এপি নিউজ আমেরিকান একাডেমি অফ পেডিয়াট্রিক্স এর নিউজের একটা ইসে পাঠালাম তাতে তোরা দেখে নিস
ঠিক আছে।
Thank you. With this, we close this ICH, but we will continue to have ICH CMEs in future also, and we must express our gratitude to both Panacea Biotech and MSD Pharmaceuticals for sponsoring today's CME. And thanks once again. We will have similar programs in future also.
Next program date কবে যেন আছে? I think
Next vaccine program along with a panel discussion on pneumonia will be on 12th September. On 12th September at
12
8:30
September and 26 September.
Yeah, and after that
Hello.
it will be 26 September.
Hello, Jaideep, may I ask you one thing?
Yes,
Is
madam.
varicella zoster immunoglobulin available?
Difficulty.
No,
difficult.
it is not
It's in gray
usually
market, it's
available.
in gray
Gray
market.
market with difficulty paying high price, it is available.
And also that you will have to give very fast. You cannot wait for long. You will have to give it within 72 hours of contact.
Yes. Thank you.
I have used only twice in my lifetime.
Mane, you can give IVIG, but you
IVIG.
never know what is the content of the anti-varicella antibodies in that. So thank you everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.